Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone looked at you without knowing why? Have you ever sensed that you're carrying something within you, something others can't name, but they can feel? Carl Jung called this an archetypal presence, an invisible, rare and powerful force that can't be learned. You're born with it. This kind of aura isn't about beauty, fame, or regular intelligence. It comes from somewhere else, a place few ever access, because it demands pain, truth, and a deep dive into the unconscious. Only 1% of people carry this energy, and when you have it, the world reacts differently. Some people are drawn to you like magnets, others back away like you're dangerous. But why does this happen? What lies behind this aura that feels so unexplainable? And how would Jung explain this phenomenon? In this video, you'll discover the mystery behind this rare presence and maybe realize it was always inside you. You make people nervous. Without saying a word, you walk into a room and before you speak, before you even take your seat, something shifts. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's there. People glance your way, not out of curiosity, but from an inner tension they don't quite understand. Some avoid your gaze, others try too hard to be friendly. A few act like nothing happened, but deep inside they felt it, that silent pressure that your presence brings. Carl Jung would not call this charisma, he would call it archetypal tension. When someone walks around carrying unresolved truths inside them, deep truths, the unconscious of others reacts. Your aura carries weight. It's not about the way you look or the tone of your voice. It's about what you awaken in people without trying to. And for most, that awakening is uncomfortable. The modern world is built on masks, polite smiles, rehearsed conversations, surface-level interactions. But when someone walks in with a rare aura, it disturbs that balance. Your energy is not chaotic. It's not even loud, but it's deeply real. It confronts others with themselves. People can't define it, but they feel it. They may describe you as intense, different, or even too much, but those are labels from people who are not used to being seen. Because that's what you do, you see. Not with your eyes, but with your presence. And being truly seen, without filters or defenses, makes people vulnerable. That vulnerability often feels like threat. It's why they talk about you after you leave, why they feel drained or stirred up around you. It's not that you're doing something wrong, it's that you're doing nothing fake. And in a world that thrives on fake, being real is revolutionary and unsettling. This nervousness people feel has nothing to do with you personally. It has everything to do with the parts of themselves they don't want to face. Jung called these parts the shadow. Everything we reject, suppress, or deny in ourselves. When someone with a rare aura enters the room, the shadow wakes up. And when the shadow wakes up, it projects. That's why people may act defensive, sarcastic, overly friendly, or distant. They are not reacting to you. They are reacting to what you reflect back to them. Your aura acts like a mirror, but not the kind that shows what's already visible. It reveals what's hidden. And that kind of reflection doesn't always make people smile. It challenges them. It reminds them of truths they've buried. It pulls them toward a depth they've avoided for years. You may have tried to tone yourself down, to be more normal, more soft, more easygoing. But the truth is, your very existence makes people confront something. And that's not something to apologize for. You were not born to blend in. You were born to hold presence, to carry the kind of energy that doesn't need to shout, because it speaks through silence. So yes, people may feel nervous around you. But don't mistake that for rejection. They're not rejecting you. They're resisting the truth that your presence awakens in them, and that truth is sacred. 2. You carry the weight of something you can't explain. There's something heavy inside you. You've felt it since you were a child. It's not sadness, though it includes it. It's not anxiety, though it sometimes feels like that. It's not even trauma, at least not entirely. It's more like a deep sense of knowing, like your soul remembers something the world forgot. You've walked through life sensing things others ignore. You notice when someone is lying, even if their words are perfect. You feel the tension in a room before anyone says a word. You get tired in crowds because you absorb what others don't even realize they're feeling. Carl Jung would say, your unconscious is more active than most. You live close to the collective unconscious, the invisible field of emotion, memory and instinct that connects all of us. And when that field stirs, you feel it, even if you don't understand why. People with this kind of aura often feel older than they are, not physically but spiritually, as if life handed them wisdom before they had the language to describe it. They grow up asking different questions, not how do I fit in, but why do I feel so much? Or what's really going on beneath all this noise? This rare energy doesn't make you superior, but it makes you different. You seek silence, because in silence, things make sense. You prefer honesty over comfort. You crave meaning even when it makes you suffer. And most of all, you sense that there's more to life than what's visible. But with that awareness comes isolation. Not because others push you away, but because you can't play the same games. You see too much. You know too deeply. And sometimes that knowing is exhausting. You may have tried to explain it to people, to friends, to family, to someone you love. But the words always fall short, because what you carry isn't logical. It's archetypal. It's something Jung would describe as a calling, not in a religious sense, but in the sense that your life is meant to go deeper, to walk into the unconscious, to become whole. This weight isn't a curse. It's a compass. It points you inward toward self-awareness, toward individuation. It shows you what matters beyond appearances. And while others chase approval, you're drawn to truth. That's why you don't need a room full of people to feel seen. You only need one real moment, one real connection. That's why you don't get bored in solitude. You discover more of yourself there. This inner depth can't be taught. It can't be faked. And it definitely can't be turned off. It's something ancient, embedded in your being. It's why you've always felt both burdened and blessed. So if you've ever felt like you're carrying something you can't explain, it's because you are. And maybe that's your gift. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the S.I.M method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. 3. You make people feel seen in ways they can't handle. There's something strange that happens when people talk to you. They begin with small talk, the usual words, the usual tone. But within minutes, sometimes even seconds, something in their voice changes. Their eyes shift, their guard lowers, and suddenly they're saying things they didn't plan to say, sharing emotions they usually hide, revealing truths they haven't even fully admitted to themselves. You didn't ask for this, you weren't digging, but somehow your presence creates a kind of space where people feel exposed, not in a threatening way, but in a raw, honest, intimate way. Carl Jung would call this the power of the mirror archetype. When someone has a rare aura, they unconsciously reflect the hidden inner world of the other person. Not by words, not by questions, simply by being. You don't just listen, you absorb. And in your silence, people hear themselves. They feel noticed on levels they've ignored for years. This is powerful, and for many, terrifying. Because being seen feels good until it reveals what we're trying to avoid. Most people go through life wearing emotional armor. They build identities based on achievements, roles, expectations. They hide their insecurities behind busy schedules, confident smiles, or carefully chosen words. But when they stand in front of someone with a rare aura, that armor starts to crack. Not because you're attacking it, but because your energy makes pretense feel unbearable. It's like a light they didn't ask for is suddenly shining on their soul, and they don't know how to stand in it. You might notice how often people open up to you, strangers, co-workers, even people who say they don't like deep conversations. They talk, they unravel, and then sometimes they pull away. They go silent. They act strange the next time they see you, not because you did anything wrong, but because something inside them got revealed, and they weren't ready for it. This is one of the most painful parts of having a rare aura. You connect deeply, and then they disappear. You offer presence, and they retreat. You hold space, and they run. Jung explained this as the result of projection collapse. When someone is projecting a false self, a mask, and that mask is reflected back as hollow, the person experiences discomfort. It's not your fault. It's the confrontation between their truth and their illusion. Your ability to see through people is not just intuition. It's a form of unconscious intelligence. You don't analyze, you feel. You don't invade, you receive, but what you carry silently communicates, I see you. And when someone isn't ready to be seen, they often mistake that gaze for danger. Sometimes they react with kindness, sometimes with distance, sometimes with aggression. But underneath all reactions, there is one truth. They felt something with you they don't feel with anyone else. A connection so real it scared them. A moment so vulnerable it made them question who they are. And the most difficult part? You rarely get credit for this, because people don't consciously realize what you gave them. They think they just had a sudden moment of clarity or a strange wave of emotion. But deep down, something in your energy triggered it. You are not a therapist. You are not a healer in the traditional sense. But you are a mirror, and that is sacred work. Jung believed that true transformation begins with awareness, and awareness often starts in the presence of someone who reflects back the parts we've denied. That's what you do, naturally, effortlessly, often painfully. You awaken awareness in others just by being fully yourself. This is also why people feel drained after speaking with you. Not because you take energy, but because you awaken it. You stir their soul. You touch the unconscious. And that level of connection is not easy to process. You might sometimes wonder, why do people always come to me with their problems? Or why do they vanish after opening up to me? It's because your aura doesn't allow people to stay asleep. And staying awake, emotionally, psychologically, is terrifying for most. So if you've ever felt confused by people getting close and then pulling away, if you've ever blamed yourself for being too intense, if you've ever felt the pain of being a safe space for others but receiving silence in return, know this: you are not too much. You are just more real than they're used to, and in a world full of noise, your silent truth is the loudest thing they've ever felt. 4. You walk through life, feeling like you don't belong anywhere. It's not just a feeling, it's a constant hum in the background of your existence. You could be in a room full of people who care about you. You could be smiling, engaging in conversation, surrounded by warmth. And yet, somewhere deep inside, there's this quiet but persistent sense that you're not really part of it. That you're observing it all from a distance, like a guest in your own life. Carl Jung described this experience as the path of the individuated soul, the one who cannot fully merge with the crowd because they were never meant to. People with a rare aura are not built to fit in. They're built to see beyond. And that vision, that depth, comes with a cost. You constantly feel out of place in a world that worships surface. You may have spent years trying to belong. You adapted. You conformed. You studied how to be normal. You watched how others laughed, how they reacted, how they connected, and you tried to mimic that rhythm. But it always felt like a performance. You were never inside it, only near it, close enough to touch, but never enough to disappear into it like others do. That's because your soul doesn't want comfort. It wants truth. and truth rarely fits in. You question things most people accept. You feel things more deeply than the situation calls for. You struggle to settle into groupthink, to align with trends, to celebrate what others chase. It's not because you're cynical. It's because you see the thread behind the curtain. You feel the hollowness behind the noise. This sense of not belonging isn't a flaw. It's not a trauma response. It's the signature of an awakened mind in a sleeping world. Jung believed that people who carry deep awareness, people who have done the work of confronting their shadow, integrating their unconscious, listening to the soul's voice, will naturally feel alienated. Why? Because so few choose that path. Most people choose safety, predictability, approval, but you chose truth. Or maybe it chose you. And once you begin to see clearly, you can't unsee it. The laughter that feels forced, the goals that feel empty, the relationships that run on autopilot, you see it all. And in seeing, you feel disconnected. This disconnect doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're awake. And yet, this doesn't protect you from the loneliness. You long for connection, real connection. The kind where you don't have to shrink, translate, or soften your truth, where you can show up as you are, intense, quiet, complex, whole, and still be held. But here's the paradox. People are drawn to your depth, but they fear it. They admire your insight, but they don't understand it. They say you're different, but they don't know how to be with different without trying to fix it or label it. So you walk through life alone, not physically, but spiritually. You talk to people, but you rarely feel met. You explain yourself, but you're rarely understood. You offer your heart, but it often lands in silence. And yet, despite all of this, you keep going. You keep seeking, because something inside you whispers you were not made for the crowd. You were made for something more. That something more is not fame. It's not success. It's not even peace. It's wholeness. You are not here to belong to the world. You are here to become yourself completely. And in that becoming, you may find that the sense of not belonging transforms. It becomes a kind of sacred solitude, a space where your soul breathes, a space where you finally stop trying to fit in and start listening to your own rhythm. This rhythm is ancient. It speaks through silence. It moves through intuition. It pulls you toward experiences that make no logical sense but feel deeply right. It urges you to create, to feel, to observe, to speak only when the words come from somewhere real. And when you finally accept that you're not meant to belong everywhere, something changes. You stop apologizing for your intensity. You stop explaining your solitude. You stop chasing rooms that were never built for your kind of presence. You begin to build your own temple, quietly, slowly, from within. And maybe, just maybe, one day someone else will walk through your door, and for the first time, you'll both feel like you belong. 5. You're constantly misunderstood because you communicate beyond words. One of the most frustrating experiences for people with a rare aura is being misunderstood, even when their intentions are good, even when they speak clearly. No matter how carefully you try to express yourself, there's often a gap between what you feel and what people hear. This isn't about poor communication skills. It's about the fact that your essence speaks at a level most people aren't tuned into, and Carl Jung's work helps explain why. According to Jung, we communicate not only through words and actions, but also through unconscious signals, facial expressions, body language, emotional energy, tone, even silence. People with rare auras tend to operate from a deeper layer of consciousness. This means they often carry unspoken truths, subtle observations, and emotional nuance in their presence. They speak a language of energy more than a language of noise. This is why your words are often taken out of context. You say something neutral, and someone takes it as an attack. You offer a calm observation, and they react defensively. Or worse, you remain silent, and that silence is interpreted as judgment, disapproval, or arrogance. It can feel as if the more aware and careful you become, the more misaligned the responses of others are. The issue here is projection. Jung emphasized the psychological mechanism of projection, the idea that people unconsciously project their own unresolved emotions, fears, and insecurities onto others. When you carry a strong, self-aware, grounded aura, it naturally triggers projections in those around you. They don't see you as you are. They see a distorted version of you, shaped by their own unresolved inner world. This is especially true when your calmness is interpreted as coldness, or your intensity is mistaken for hostility. Another layer of this misunderstanding comes from how deeply you feel things. While most people think and react on a surface level, you perceive undercurrents. You sense contradictions in what people say and what they truly mean. You often respond to the unspoken truth rather than the spoken narrative. This confuses people because they're expecting a conventional interaction. Instead, they feel like you're reading them, and in a sense, you are. You may notice how people often tell you that you're too much, or too deep, or that you're overthinking. But the reality is, you're not overthinking. You're simply perceiving the full picture, including the parts they don't want to acknowledge. You feel subtleties they've trained themselves to ignore, and when you reflect those back, even unintentionally, it creates discomfort. The result of this repeated misunderstanding is emotional exhaustion. You start to hesitate before expressing yourself. You withdraw from conversations that feel shallow. You stop trying to explain your thoughts in detail because you've learned that most people are listening only to respond, not to understand. Over time, you might begin to doubt your own clarity, thinking maybe you really are difficult to understand. But you're not. The truth is, your mode of communication simply bypasses the common social scripts, and that's what makes it rare. Jung believed that those who are on a journey of individuation, the process of becoming a complete self, develop a more symbolic, intuitive way of relating to others. They no longer operate from the ego alone. Instead, they respond from the soul, but this language of the soul is not always welcome in a world that prefers clear categories, simplified emotions, and predictable behavior. Your presence may carry sadness in silence. It may carry truth through stillness. You may say very little, yet make someone feel exposed. Or you may speak deeply, yet leave them confused because they expected something superficial. This creates a paradox. People feel drawn to you, but they often don't know why. And when they try to label or define you, they fail because you're not operating on a level that words alone can define. This is not a reason to isolate yourself or stop expressing who you are. On the contrary, it's a sign of your inner growth. The more misunderstood you are by the majority, the more likely it is that you've stepped into a depth that most haven't yet reached. It's not elitism, it's evolution, and it requires patience. You must learn how to hold your truth even when others don't see it. You must accept that some people will misread your silence, your gaze, or your tone, and that's okay. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to understand yourself so fully that you no longer need validation from misunderstanding minds. And when you do meet someone who speaks your language, who hears what you mean without you needing to explain, it will feel like coming home. Until then, let your soul continue to speak, even when the world is too noisy to listen. 6. You attract people who want to change you, and then resent you for not changing. One of the most painful patterns experienced by those with a rare aura is the type of people they attract. From the outside, it may seem like admiration. People are drawn to your energy, your depth, your calmness, your presence. They may even describe you as magnetic or different in a way they can't quite explain. But over time, that admiration often turns into discomfort, and in many cases it turns into resentment. Not because you did something wrong, but because you refuse to become what they subconsciously wanted you to be. Carl Jung would describe this as a collision between the individuated self and the collective expectations of others. People project onto you not only who they think you are, but who they want you to be. When someone with a rare aura enters their life, it awakens something dormant. They sense depth, and they mistake it for something they can possess. They interpret your silence as invitation, your intensity as emotional availability, your uniqueness as something they can mold. At first, it feels like connection. You may even feel hopeful. Finally, someone sees you, appreciates your energy, wants to be close. But then the subtle pressure begins. They want you to respond faster, to smile more, to be less quiet, to react how they're used to fit into their emotional blueprint. And when you don't, they don't understand. Worse, they feel rejected. Even though you never promised to be anything but yourself, your refusal to conform becomes offensive to them. Jung would call this the projection of unmet needs. These people are not relating to you as you are, but rather to an image you unknowingly activated in their psyche. They thought you could fill a void. They thought your mystery meant submission, your stillness meant agreement. When the reality doesn't match their fantasy, they feel betrayed. But it's not really you they're angry at. It's the mirror you held up. This becomes even more painful in close relationships, romantic, familial, or even friendships. You offer depth, and they're drawn to it. But once they realize that this depth can't be controlled, it makes them anxious. They try to reshape the dynamic, to regulate your presence, to flatten your complexity. But the more they try, the more distant you seem. And the more distant you seem, the more they push. Eventually, that push becomes conflict, and you're left feeling like the villain in someone else's story. You might have heard things like, "Why can't you just be normal?" Or "You're too complicated." Or perhaps they withdrew, silently, without giving you a reason, leaving you with a sense of guilt that was never yours to carry. This is the cost of having a strong, sovereign presence. You become a canvas for other people's unresolved desires, and when you refuse to become their fantasy, they blame you for not making them feel complete. It's important to recognize that this isn't about arrogance or superiority. You're not better than anyone, but your refusal to betray your authenticity is deeply unsettling for those who are disconnected from theirs. Most people are used to others bending, adjusting, and diluting themselves to be liked. But you, by nature or by pain, have chosen not to abandon who you are. That choice, whether conscious or instinctive, makes you rare, and when someone rare refuses to be possessed, it confuses those who have only known conditional love. Jung believed that the individuation process, the path to becoming a fully realized self, often includes periods of loss, misunderstanding, and exile. Because you stop serving other people's projections, you become free. But that freedom threatens those who are still trapped in masks. They may love your light, but they hate the way it exposes their shadows. And when that happens, they often turn away, not because of who you are, but because of what they see in themselves when they're near you. The solution is not to dim your light or soften your depth. It's not to explain yourself over and over again to people committed to misunderstanding you. The solution is to honor the integrity of your energy, to understand that your aura was never meant to please everyone. It was meant to filter, to protect, to attract only what resonates with your truth. You will still attract people. That won't stop, but now you'll recognize the pattern sooner. You'll feel the tension when admiration turns into control. You'll feel the shift when curiosity becomes criticism. And instead of shrinking to maintain the connection, you'll walk away, knowing that preserving your truth matters more than pleasing someone's illusion. You don't exist to make others comfortable. You exist to be whole, and anyone who can't handle your wholeness is simply not ready for the kind of connection you carry. 7. You often feel pulled between two worlds, one that exists and one that calls you. There is a strange and constant tension that lives inside people who carry a rare aura. It's not anxiety in the traditional sense, nor is it confusion. It's a deep, ongoing sensation of being pulled between two realities, the one you see around you every day, with routines, responsibilities, expectations, and another that is quieter, harder to describe, but no less real. This second world doesn't operate on time or logic. It doesn't make itself obvious, but you feel it in your bones, in your dreams, in the silences between conversations, and it calls to you like a home you've never visited but somehow remember. In the visible world, you play roles. You go to work, take care of tasks, maintain relationships, and function like everyone else. You've learned how to do that, even if it never quite feels natural. You can have a conversation, smile at the right moment, complete projects, and show up when required. From the outside, no one would guess that while you're engaged in daily life, another part of you is somewhere else entirely, listening for something deeper, waiting for something sacred. It's not escapism. You're not lost in fantasy. What you feel is a pull toward something more meaningful, more alive, more connected to who you truly are. Carl Jung described this inner division as the split between the persona and the self. The persona is the mask you wear to move through society. It's necessary for interaction and social survival. But the self is who you are beneath all of that. Your instincts, your truths, your unconscious wisdom, your purpose. People with rare auras are more aware of this split than most. They can't simply disappear into roles or lose themselves in routines. They feel the friction of pretending. They feel the emptiness of living only on the surface. Even when things are going well, there's still that whisper inside. This isn't all. You may experience this pull in many forms. Sometimes it feels like dissatisfaction. You achieve something and wonder why it didn't fulfill. You spend time with people you care about, but still feel alone in the conversation. You participate in society, yet part of you remains distant, as if watching life happen rather than fully engaging with it. At other times, the pull feels like longing. You find yourself craving silence, beauty, mystery, meaning. Not because life is bad, but because your soul knows there's more. This second world that calls you isn't about escape. It's about depth. It's the world of symbols, energy, archetypes, and spiritual memory. It expresses itself through intuition, synchronicity, art, music, philosophy, and the subtle language of dreams. You feel closest to it in moments of solitude, when you're away from noise and distractions. It arrives like a breath of clarity when the world goes quiet, and even though it doesn't offer anything tangible, you know it's where you feel most real. Jung taught that the goal of psychological development is individuation, the integration of all parts of the self into a unified whole. This includes both the outer world of form and the inner world of meaning. The problem is that modern society often encourages disconnection from the inner world. It tells you to focus on what can be measured, achieved, and seen. The invisible, your emotions, instincts, memories, and longings, are treated as irrelevant or inconvenient. But for someone with a rare aura, ignoring that inner world isn't an option. It's not a choice. It's a betrayal of the soul. That's why people like you often feel conflicted. You want to belong, to participate, to contribute, but you also want to honor what you feel inside. The challenge is not choosing between these two worlds, but learning how to bridge them. You are not meant to abandon one for the other. You are meant to walk between them, bringing wisdom from the unseen into the seen and helping others remember what they've forgotten. This isn't easy. It requires emotional resilience, spiritual clarity, and deep self-trust. The outer world won't always understand you. People may think you're distant or strange. You may have been told you're unrealistic or too dreamy. But that's because they only live in one world. You live in both, and that gives you access to something most people have never experienced: inner freedom. You might be drawn to certain activities not because they're trendy or useful, but because they act as portals. Music, writing, meditation, walking in nature, they aren't hobbies. They're ways of anchoring your presence in a reality that aligns with your essence. They give form to the formless. They allow you to process what the mind can't logically explain. This connection to two worlds also explains why you may feel emotionally exhausted at times. Being present in both places takes energy. It takes attention, focus, and care. You sense what others ignore. You hold space for energies others don't notice. And while this is a gift, it also requires rest, solitude, and intentional boundaries. You are not lost. You are not unfocused. You are simply responding to a life that includes more than one layer. That response is sacred. So when you feel disconnected from the outer world, remember, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means your inner world is alive. And when you feel torn between participating in society and listening to your intuition, remind yourself that you were never meant to live like everyone else. You are here to translate the invisible, to give shape to the unseen, to live in a way that honors the full spectrum of human experience. You're not too much. You're simply listening to what others forgot to hear. 8. Your existence alone awakens something in others they can't explain. When you carry a rare aura, your very existence affects people, even when you're not trying to do anything at all. You could be sitting silently in a room, minding your own business, and yet something in your presence shifts the atmosphere. People become more alert, more self-aware, sometimes even more reactive. They may suddenly grow quiet, or they may start over-explaining themselves. They might open up without knowing why, or pull away without giving a reason. This happens not because of anything you said or did, but because of what your presence represents. Carl Jung believed that individuals who embody deep levels of integration, people who have faced their shadows and embraced their full self, create an unconscious ripple effect in others. That ripple is what you're witnessing. The influence you carry isn't loud. It doesn't rely on attention-seeking behavior, performance, or persuasion. It comes from something more subtle, yet far more powerful: coherence. When your inner world is aligned, when you're no longer performing, pretending, or proving, people feel it. Even if they can't put it into words, they react to it. They notice you. They behave differently around you. They sense that you don't play by the same invisible rules everyone else follows. And that disrupts the illusion they live in. This kind of authenticity is magnetic to some and intimidating to others. People who are ready to meet themselves will feel safe and inspired in your presence. They may not even understand why, but something about you makes them feel like they can breathe again, like it's finally okay to drop the mask. Others, however, will feel exposed. Without you saying anything, they'll feel seen in ways they weren't prepared for. Your calm might feel like judgment. Your silence might feel like rejection. But none of this is personal. What they're reacting to is the contrast between your inner clarity and their inner confusion. Jung taught that we all carry within us a desire to become whole. But most people are afraid of what that process requires. It demands honesty, emotional discomfort, and letting go of attachments to false identities. So when someone like you comes along, someone whose presence radiates the quiet confidence of self-awareness, it unconsciously confronts them with what they've avoided. You become a mirror, not of their perfection, but of their potential. And that mirror isn't always welcome. You might notice that people often feel compelled to explain themselves to you, even when you didn't ask. Or they might act unusually. Nervous, talk too much, or suddenly share something deeply personal and then feel awkward about it. Later they might say, "I don't know why I told you all that," or "I usually don't open up like this." This is because your energy bypasses their social defenses. You don't demand vulnerability, but your presence makes hiding feel unnatural. On the other hand, you've probably also experienced people projecting negativity onto you, resentment, criticism, or avoidance, for reasons that seem disconnected from reality. They might say you're distant or arrogant, or accuse you of being too intense, even though you were just being yourself. Again, this isn't about you. This is projection. At work, Jung wrote extensively about how we assign our inner conflicts onto external figures. When someone can't reconcile the discomfort they feel in your presence, they unconsciously blame you for it. Being unforgettable doesn't always mean being embraced. Sometimes you leave a deep mark in someone's life simply by being real. And they don't know how to process it. But months or years later, they may remember you. They may hear your words again in their thoughts. They may finally understand the truth you represented. People with rare auras often carry resonance, not just impact. Resonance stays. It moves quietly beneath the surface and re-emerges when the person is ready. This can be a lonely path. It's hard to explain why people are drawn to you, but also uncomfortable around you. Why they open up but then disappear. Why you feel emotionally responsible for energy shifts in a room, even though you said almost nothing. But there is nothing wrong with you. What you're experiencing is the natural effect of alignment in a fragmented world. When most people are disconnected from their own soul, they can't help but react to someone who lives in touch with theirs. Jung believed that those who undergo the journey of individuation, who integrate their conscious and unconscious, who embrace both their light and shadow, become agents of transformation in society simply through their being. You don't need to be a teacher, a therapist, or a leader to play this role. Just being yourself is enough. Just showing up with integrity, honesty, and depth is revolutionary, because your truth, lived silently, authentically, wakes people up. You might never be fully appreciated for what you carry. You may never hear the full story of how your energy changed someone's life, but that doesn't mean the change didn't happen. It just means it happened beyond the level of words, in the unconscious, where real transformation begins. If you've ever wondered why people seem to remember you years after a single conversation, why you can feel when someone is lying even before they speak, or why you often feel like an emotional mirror for others, now you know. It's not in your head, it's in your aura. And it's rare. Only 1% of people carry this kind of frequency, not because they are chosen, but because they chose. They chose to go deep, to face themselves, to stop pretending, to live as who they truly are, even when it's hard, even when it costs them comfort, relationships, or approval. And in doing so, they became something else entirely, not just a person, but a presence. Your presence is not something you need to earn. It's not something you need to prove. It's the natural result of the work you've done, the healing, the awareness, the honesty. And if you're still becoming, still integrating, still finding your way, then you're on the right path, because this kind of aura isn't about perfection, it's about truth. And your truth is enough. You don't need to change. You don't need to be softer or louder or easier to understand. You just need to be what you already are, real, and in a world full of noise, your authenticity is the loudest thing anyone will ever feel.